Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, we go into the showers, and so we don't deal with single events, single objects, but with a group of meteors. And this is a nice thing we found out when the Aurigids last year occurred. And I will go through these 3 points. So it looks very short, but I hope it's good contents. So just very brief, something about the Aurigids. They were detected by an outburst in 1935. If you want to reconstruct, it may be something like a rate of 50 or so. And immediately Good came out with the proposal that Comet Keys, a very long period comet, about 2,500 years orbital period, is the parent of this. And surprisingly, if you think about 2,500 years, another outburst series was seen in these years. Among these, the 2007 was predicted and also observed and was quite strong with this rate and a very low population index. I'll come back to population index soon. But the calculations said there's no further outburst expected. I know this because every year I ask for the shower calendar whether there's something going on. But then in 2019, now we are in the event of last year, the ZHR was surprisingly high already from end August onwards. And then there was also a peak found, which we look at also more detail in a moment. And there are 3 questions. What is the radiant? Is it different from the average? What is the population index? Is it also specific, like 2007? And what does the modeling say? Okay, let's go into these few points. This here, the first profile is from the entire period. So it starts here from end August 25th and lasts till about 6th of September. So here we just make a very rough profile. So just 1 or 2 values per night, just to have an idea where the peak is and how the activity is. And what we see here easily is that in 2019, the average is something like 10 or so. While in the average over many years, over decades, it's roughly 5. And what even is more obvious are these 3 values here in this night, 31st of August to 1st of September. So then we have a look a bit closer. And unfortunately, like so often in observations, we find a gap. So this is the night 31st to 1st of September in detail. So we see just here it starts with very high values and then drops down. These dots are from the visual data. The green ones here are from the video, from the preliminary data of the video database. So there's something higher, but not really conclusive. And unfortunately, what I'm normally always looking for is the confirmation by radio forward scatter data provided by Hirofumi Sugimoto, but he has nothing from 2019, unfortunately. So we have not an optimal data set. The radiant, as we have only the visual data at hand at this moment, we cannot do any information from that, but we can have a look at the population index. And again, we find from 2019, these are these bluish-violet points here, it's roughly 2.5 with a possible small dip, 2.3, you could say. And the average is also the same. So the average concerns the period between 1998 to 2018, excluding, of course, the 2007 value, which is this one, and significantly lower. So this is excluded. So the last year's Aurigid population index was almost precisely as the average over the last decades. So the average size distribution is also not different from the average. So we don't have any specific population of meteoroids here. So then we looked into the modeling. So here Esko and Jeremie came in and modeled the one revolution dust trail of this comet Keys. And we find that in 2019, the minimum distance was 0.003 AU, which corresponds to about 1.2 lunar distances. And that's usually too far to make any visible effect on Earth. And also you see the observation was here, and the closest approach was about 0.7 degrees. So it's 2/3 of a day away, so it's not an explanation for that. But then we looked for possible explanations which could say something about the activity which was observed, obviously, in 2019. One idea was there may be another parent comet, which has a comet, an orbit which is close to that of the parent Keys, this one. And there's a candidate. This one observed in 1719, but it's very uncertain data. And of course, it's very unlikely or very artificial to construct something to have a second parent so close. The more interesting thing is the one revolution dust trail. One always thinks one revolution means the comet is once around the sun and the particles as well, but the particles don't follow the same orbit as the parent. And also it may be stretched and diluted by different effects. And so there's in fact possible that we have a one revolution dust trail from one revolution before, which is extended 2 orbits. Still a one revolution dust trail. There's a model calculation made by Jeremie in connection with another case. And there you have the comet just having done one orbit, but the dust has done 2. And then we, of course, have slightly different parameters, and we may encounter such a dust trail. And there's a third idea which we discussed that is, as we know from June Boteids, for example, or Orionids, that the parent was once in a smaller orbit. We don't know. But then meteoroids released earlier from the comet may have been altered into resonant orbits. But that's, again, a lot of assumptions necessary to produce such a situation. So this extended diluted trail, one revolution trail, which is actually more than once around the sun, is the most likely, according to our modeling and thoughts. Unfortunately, it's difficult to test this next time because before 2043 and 44, there's no real close approach. But then not only Esko and Jeremie repeated their modeling, but also Mikiya Sato from Japan did new calculations, assuming, new or updated parameters. And they all come with an interesting situation for next year. So there's on 31st of August, you see the predicted times are pretty close to each other, between 2120 to 2140. And it's much closer. So that means we might have a nice show of the Aurigids in next year. And then once we know what happens next year, we can perhaps also go back to model the 2019 event to have further clues to one of these 3 ideas which we had. So the conclusion is, don't miss the small showers. They also have interesting events, and even if you don't expect anything, nothing is calculated, there might be a surprise. And just here, the modeling for 2021, here you see the minimum distance is very close. And the only thing which we don't know, of course, is, as usual, the density within such a trail, as we have to assume that's diluted. So it's not as close, not as dense as the original one revolution trail. But maybe better, that's a comment from Esko, maybe better than in 2007, and no moon this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, a perfect timing. Maybe next year we will have to organize IMC for the late August period and watch it, check it in person. So anyone with question or comment or anything alternative? No hand raised yet. So this is a very nice prediction. And next year, if we will have this at the same time, late September, you can report, or someone can report.
We should have the results then.
We should know the result next year. I'm eagerly waiting.